Hi, everyone. I'm Max Feinhesich, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Telescope Tech Insights. Here we talk about the most interesting things happening in technology, and we happen to have the luck today of speaking with Nick Loeper, co-founder and CTO at Fisherman. He's a phenomenal technologist and an incredible human being. He's been featured as Forbes 30 under 30, and he runs one of the most effective tech teams I have ever seen. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Max, for having me today.
Thank you for being here. We're really excited to talk to you and get some of your insights around building teams, building software, and more than anything, some of the lessons you've learned from your career in tech. So maybe you can just start with a brief introduction about yourself, what you're building at Fisherman, and some of your current team's structures.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great. So first off, again, CTO of Fisherman. We are a digital marketing solution for salons and restaurants. So we're providing various different types of services um, for salons and restaurants, such as social media, website, branding, and a few different components of SEO. So right now, we're probably at the late stage, C stage. We have a team of 30, sales, marketing, engineering, product design, and various other functions at this stage right now.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, I was looking over at your LinkedIn profile and, you did computer science and quickly thereafter, not a lot of formal jobs, maybe, as interns and internships and stuff like that, but you kind of jumped into the startup world through Techstars. Can you tell us a little bit about that path and, why it worked for you? Would you recommend that to other people, maybe interested in technology and startups, but not quite sure how to get there?
Right. So yeah, I started my professional career working for for two early stage tech startups. One was in um, the LED efficiency space, and the other one was in the healthcare space, sort of trying to streamline the data intake and reporting process. When I was in college, I met my co-founder Amit, and we started ideating on the idea that all of these restaurants and salons, they don't really have a good solution to come online. The two existing solutions are to pay an agency a lot of money, or to build it yourself on a website builder. And usually, restaurant or salon owners don't have the time or money to know how to come online effectively. And so we started Fisherman with the goal of giving every small business the opportunity to come online and to have an effective web presence. And so in the early stages of Fisherman, we did join Techstars, and Techstars was a great program for us because Amit and I were technically not in the program itself. We were actually working as associates in the Techstars program, helping other startups alongside running our own company, Fisherman. And the reason we decided to go that route is because we wanted to tap into the Techstars community and network and learn from some of their structured programming, but also be able to help these other entrepreneurs and at the same time make a little bit of money to bootstrap our company. So Techstars was a great sort of starting point for us to come into the entrepreneurial community in Boston. We were also in Mass Challenge Boston as well. And then after Techstars, that's when we sort of raised our first round of money and brought on a few employees.
Awesome. Um, so something that I know Techstars is really keen on is the concept of mentorship, and I know that it's probably something that you've both explored as a recipient, but also as a mentor for others. Is that something that you think has somehow had a oversized impact in your career? Do you have currently somebody that is somebody you'd call a mentor? Are you a mentor for other more junior folks?
Right. Sorry, you cut out there a little bit, but yes, I do have a few mentors that I'm actively, engaging with right now. Some of which I've met through my time at Fisherman, and also some of which are active advisors of Fisherman. I think, as a young entrepreneur, it's really important to have folks that have done these things before. And I think there's a time and a place to try to figure things out on your own and to learn on your own, but there's also a time and a place to, seek advice from those who have done it before. Not only to move faster, but also to try to avoid bad decisions and to avoid mistakes. And so, like the mentors have been absolutely outstanding for me and my growth trajectory individually, but also in impacting the decisions we've made here at Fisherman. And I myself have been involved in mentoring others as well, to which it's useful for them. But I think it's really important to give back in the community of entrepreneurship. And I think, everybody is sort of in the same boat. Being an entrepreneur is really difficult. And I think giving back is another way to contribute to that community.
I love it. I think, you hit the nail on the head. Giving back is really important, and also learning from others who maybe have been there before. Along that same thought, process. I know that you just run, like I said at the intro, and I truly believe it, one of the most effective teams that I've ever seen. Not a lot of people, but you're incredibly efficient. You're able to put out a lot of features in a, just incredible pace. Can you share a little bit about the development process that you've maybe pieced together, modified throughout the years? How do you guys work? How are you organized? What methodologies or frameworks actually allow you to do that?
Yeah, so I think to start, I mean, we follow a rough agile approach. And I think the most important thing that's allowed us to be effective or punch above our weight is that we give developers accountability through all of the aspects of our development process. I guess an analogy I would draw is our developers are vertically integrated from start to finish, from planning and prioritization all the way to deployment, quality assurance, and testing. So what it sort of looks like is we have a lot of different channels of information coming in from various places, customers, internal team members, market research, and everything starts sort of with our product roadmap. And from there, we of course prioritize based on the needs of the business. What's most valuable for our customers? What are we hearing that is trendy or is important? And from there, we sort of break things down in a traditional format. We take our our epics on our product roadmap, make sure they're prioritized, and then we go through a product and a technical planning process, and that is often driven by various different members of our team. It's not just one person doing those things. Every engineer to this point has participated in being the main driver of a project, specifically during the planning process. So from there, since we're a small team, we're only a team of 4 or 5 engineers right now. We do team reviews on a lot of our epics so that everybody's on the same page. No matter if they're only participating in a small manner and contributing towards that project, we make sure everybody knows what our priorities are. We give everybody the chance to voice their opinion on approach, value, etc. And then from there, we take a traditional, sprint-based approach where we break it down into stories. We assign those stories to a sprint. We execute. We go through a testing and quality assurance phase, and then we, of course, deploy and release that functionality. So again, everybody is involved from start to finish, and I think that drives a sense of accountability and responsibility across the board, which gives everybody more context, and that stronger sense of ownership, I think, drives efficiency as well.
Oh, that's really insightful. Actually, I had written down, extreme ownership with some amount of oversight, which I think it's a little
Exactly.
bit of
Yeah.
what you're saying, right? This culture of giving people context, giving them a lot of responsibility, but with the oversight to make sure that they've got the tools and the necessary skill set experience to actually make the decisions that they need to be making. And,
Right.
I think maybe slowly opening up that circle of trust as they just become more and more embedded in your team. That's awesome. Is this something that you hire for, or how do you find these people? Because not all engineers care about the context as much. Or how do
Right.
you think about that on the pipeline building for hiring and how you select people for your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for our stage, what I value the most is versatility, and also engineers who are not afraid to do some of the other aspects of the development pipeline that are not just coding. I think there are many essential components of building and releasing software that are not just hands to keyboard. I think if anything, being able to assemble an important technical plan and understanding how or being able to gauge the value or impact that might have on customers is essential. So I think for us, we usually look for folks that, to be more specific, are full stack or can work across the stack. It's great if they have some knowledge or background in technical scoping, planning, infrastructure, DevOps, those types of things. Those are often nice to haves because not everybody has all of those skills off of the bat. And also, we prefer to be, I wouldn't say skill agnostic, but we don't necessarily only target or look for folks that just have great experience in our stack. Or in other words, I would prefer to have someone who is a really fast learner and has a comprehensive set of skills, but is maybe not an expert in React, because those people can often quickly pick things up. And again, those other skills can be applied in many other places that are valuable to our engineering team.
Fantastic. So just to recap, you'd rather have somebody who can learn than somebody who's an expert, and you want to have them bring their whole self to work. Basically, they need to be passionate about what you're building. They want to have that context. They want to understand the business and kind of the why behind what you're doing. That makes a lot of sense.
Right, at least at this stage, because I mean, we only have a team of 5 engineers, and I think what's most important is that versatility, because we might have a few months where we're working heavily on the front end, building out some new website designs. We might have a couple months where we're working on the back end, building out new workflows or new features that support our digital marketing services. So being able to appropriately allocate resources, development resources towards projects without any restrictions, because we have that versatility across the board, has given us a lot of flexibility.
Got it. Got it. So you're talking about this versatility and the type of people you bring on board. I've seen something that you guys do, which, is interesting, and it's a little bit around the rituals of remote work. I know that, you have your stand-ups and whatnot, but you also care about what people are doing outside of work and kind of more of that social connectedness. Can you share a little bit about those rituals and why they work, why you think they're important and valuable?
Yeah, I mean, so first off, we are a remote company, so we try to be proactive about the opportunities to boost collaboration on our team and camaraderie. Within the engineering team, our daily sync periods usually start with just 20 minutes of unstructured social time. A lot of times I've seen and been part of other teams where you join a daily sync and it's right to business and it just doesn't really feel very natural. And that unstructured social time is just really fun for everybody because we just bring random topics to the discussion table. We talk about what's going on in the world. And it's just a way for us to relax, in a remote environment where we don't get a lot of FaceTime with each other. Team wide or company wide, we do also have, what we call monthly social hours. So a pair of two people is responsible for driving the social hour every month, and they come prepared with an activity. Like sometimes it's a game, sometimes it's a thought experiment. It could be many different things, but it's an opportunity for us to, as a whole team, socialize together. And again, it's on Fridays, so it's relaxed. Everybody's having a good time. We have some good laughs. And again, I think it's really important because we weren't originally remote. We transitioned to remote um, midway through COVID. And I think as a founder, it's really important to find those proactive opportunities to create that remote culture, because it's not something you can do reactively, and creating a great culture at all is a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think, the fact that we all went remote doesn't mean that it just kind of naturally happened. It takes deliberate effort and some amount of, just being thoughtful around not just the work being done, but also the people behind that work, which I think is something that you guys have done a phenomenal work with, with your team. Um, Now, as we're thinking about, you're talking about processes and rituals that you've put in place. What about tools? Are there any specific tools that you're excited about? It could be kind of for this remote work setup. It could just be on the software development side. Things that you might be using now that have, changed the way you work that you're excited about. Are there any specific ones you might want to call out?
Um, Nothing specifically. I think everybody nowadays is using ChatGPT or some LLM for various different reasons. I think it's useful for us on the engineering side to, for example, sometimes we use it to draft some test cases for coding projects. Sometimes we use it to do some technical planning or to think through a problem. I think it's easy with these LLMs to let it do the thinking for you and to be lazy. So I tend to try to bring my thoughts to it rather than for it to dictate the thoughts to me. So I think, those are exciting tools that are trendy right now. I think we use a lot of other tools. We use Notion for our knowledge database, and Notion is a great tool. We have a couple different, coding AI assistants. We've tried out Copilot on GitHub. Amazon just came out with a new product called Amazon Q. So we've been trying a couple things there. We've also tried a few products, one called Swivel, which is sort of a unmute to talk type of product where it just sits on the side of your computer and everybody can be in a room, but you can join whenever you'd like, and just it sort of emulates the environment of being able to go over to someone's desk and just have a natural conversation with them. Whereas, in a remote environment, if you want to talk to someone usually now, you have to set up a time, and there's too much friction involved there. So, we have various different tools that we use for communication, knowledge-based coding tools, but there's just, I guess, a couple that I.
Well, now that you mentioned LLMs, well, we touched a little bit on hiring, but has the ChatGPT revolution changed the way that you're thinking about hiring or interviewing? Have you given some thought to like what that next hire might look like in terms of process and how it changes?
Ah, that's a good question. Do you more so mean engineers gamifying the interview process by using an
Right.
LLM or something along those
Gi-
lines?
Give them a take-home test. They put it into ChatGPT, do no work, and the thing is perfect. And is it more like you want to see how they use the Copilot or what have you,
Yeah,
versus
I think there's two things. I think the benefit of the take home is that you get to see an example of someone's work. But I think the most important aspect of take home is having someone talk you through their work once they do the take home. So if someone was to completely complete a project with a tool like ChatGPT, they would probably, and it would be obvious when talking you through how they approached the product, the trade-offs they made, etc. Sorry, the project and the trade-offs that they made, it would be pretty obvious if they sort of cheated the system. Um, I usually like to structure interviews or ask questions that are very open ended and that are obviously not leading because that gives me insight into how someone thinks and what their approach to maybe creating software is. Like one example would be like, what does good code look like to you? And I know it's like a really simple question, but it can be extremely insightful. For example, a junior engineer might say things like um, clean code, well-named variables, the syntax, the control flow structure. Whereas a more senior engineer might say something like, "Oh, I think good code is code that implements extendable design patterns," or it. I think clean code is one that is code that is simplest. So again, like simple question, but it gives great insight to how one approaches thinking through building software. So I think, to come full circle and to answer your question, I think people could use LLMs. And honestly, I might even throw in a question that uses an LLM to see how someone might use an LLM like a real professional environment, because we use them in professional environments. But I think they're you can't just, for good, engineering candidates, you can't just use an LLM and then, win your way to getting a job. Like there are easy ways, I think, to spoil that opportunity and to know whether or not someone is fully utilizing that to show off their potential.
yeah, yeah. Now that we're talking about hiring, are there other simple or maybe not so simple questions that you really like to ask candidates that you might want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one is just a simple example. I also really like to do system design questions. It depends, of course, on the position because not everybody has experience doing system design before, but you can take like a generic problem and you can pare it down even further depending on the expected skill level of an individual. But I love those questions as well because it gives an opportunity for me to work directly with the interviewing candidate and to probe for questions and okay, well, why did you make this decision? What do you think about this? And it also gives me just again better insight into how they approach thinking about problems. I'll also sometimes give like a technical scoping project that we do in real time. How do you think about this problem? Here's the prompt. How would you structure the software? Again, it gives me insight into approach, how they think, how they problem solve. Because I think problem solving is one of the most important skills in software engineering. Most people can learn how to, write code, can learn syntax, right? But how do you solve problems and what is your approach? And, how do you structure or design the solution? I think that's what's most important. So to answer your question, I love problems or interview questions that give opportunities to collaborate with the candidate, but also that are open-ended enough to give them an opportunity to show the approaches they would take.
Oh, that's great. Super helpful. And I think, as we start kind of getting deeper in the conversation, the super technical things, I think is what's most valuable for people listening, right? Because it's really about getting in and understanding the way that you think and how you problem solve and how far or how deep that experience that you've you've developed over the years shines through in conversation more than a gotcha question of, what's the best way
Right.
to optimize this or that sort algorithm or data structure. Like it's not about the specifics, but more about the depth in that answer, I
Yeah, and I
guess.
think like the issue with contrived interview problems, like the standard coding challenge of implement this
Riddle
logic,
thing.
is that in real life, anybody can look up a solution to that. So how does someone critically think? How do they problem solve? That's not something that you can just make up on the fly. That's where real talent lies, I think.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Awesome. And as we're getting technical, maybe you can share with us, something that as a CTO in my previous life, I definitely faced, which is, I don't know, you mentioned React as one of the libraries that you guys use.
Right.
There's always like this impending doomsday where like one of the libraries that is critical to your project is going to come to end of life or something is no longer supported, and it's a 3-month migration for a full team, and you're like, well, but we got this roadmap and features. Like, how do you kind of manage that technical debt versus new features and probably barrage of bugs that are always in line that always get deprioritized? Is there like any
Right.
tricks or
Yeah.
tips that you've seen work
Yeah.
to manage that
Yeah. So
that
I'll start
tension?
with bugs. Like our approach to bugs is to do real-time triaging and qualifying of the significance of the bug, the impact, and then we'll either work on it almost immediately because we want to keep our bugs under control. We just don't want to have them stack up. Or depending on the significance or the severity of the bug, we will schedule it at a later time to work on. But we do have a separate workflow for bugs that allows us to keep them distinct and to keep good track of them. When it comes to system maintenance, for lack of a better term, we are having to upgrade a library, having to upgrade Python version, for example, or upgrade your Kubernetes cluster version, whatever it is. We actually have a dedicated sprint on a quarterly basis, which is what we call platform upgrade, that is dedicated just to updating our software systems. So we take a little bit of a proactive approach with doing that because, I mean, part of maintaining software, you have to update things over time, for security purposes, for end of life, for all of those reasons. So it's important for us to build that cadence into our engineering workflow. A quarterly is work for us right now because we want to maximize the amount of time we're actually building new value and features for our customers. But if you don't do these things regularly, then it can get out of control. And then you're in a position where, hey, we got to spend a month migrating this. So by having it at a quarterly basis, we can chip away at it over time and, be proactive. And when it comes to technical debt, the way I think about technical debt is I try to weigh technical debt against priorities of the entire business. So instead of thinking about technical debt of like, oh man, this portion of our software really sucks, we need to make it better. We try to qualify the scope of that technical debt. How much does it slow down our engineers? Does it compromise user experience? Is it slow? And we look at all of those factors and we say, okay, well, here's the scope of what we might do to improve this, but is it a higher priority against, for example, X building this new feature, which has this amount of rough quantifiable value for our customers? And I think that's important because it's as most engineers, they want to make developer experience better. They want to solve problems. They want to phase out poorly implemented code, and they want to pay off that technical debt. But I think, especially in the early stage when you have limited resources, you do need to weigh the priority of paying off that technical debt against all the other priorities of what you're allocating your resources towards, because they're limited. And you could spend 3 months paying off technical debt, but then you're creating no new value for your customers. So I think in combination with that regular cadence, doing system maintenance alongside sort of the approach of how we think about technical debt, we're in a pretty good position. But of course, there are things that we would like to solve today or to improve today that we don't always get to.
No, that's awesome. I think you covered, a lot of ground there, and just this idea of gaining, higher vantage point to make that, kind of weight decision on tech debt is super critical. I love the kind of quarterly sprint as well. That makes a ton of sense. Are you guys using Jira, or what are you guys using for like tracking your sprints?
Yeah, we use a product called Shortcut. It's sort of like a Kanban style tool. It's integrated with all of the version control systems. It's the user experience. Has good reporting tools.
Gotcha.
And yeah, but I mean, we started with Trello, and then Trello was just too simple for our needs, so we transitioned over to Shortcut.
I'm asking because I wanted to go more into like productivity and measurement. And so two questions. The first is, are you guys assigning points to these bugs that come up and to I mean, you gotta take that sprint, I guess. Um, how do you think about like points and productivity and measurements?
Yeah.
I know that a lot of big companies are like obsessed with like measuring developer productivity because there's a lot of large pool of money that goes into R&D. And then many of us in startups think, this is the craziest thing in the world. It's just a fool's errand. How do you think of that?
Um, so first off, we do a pointing system. We do orders of magnitude 0, 1, 2, 4, 8. Because I mean, it's really difficult to um, accurately measure effort, because perceived effort could be different than the actual effort that it takes to get a story over the finish line. And so we use rough orders of magnitude to gauge effort. But with bugs, we actually mark them as 0 because those are productivity detractors. Those are taking away time. The opportunity cost is taking away time for us to spend time on new features. So those are marked as 0. And when it comes to story pointing, we've actually taken an approach where every story is 1 point. And the reason we do that is because we force in our planning process for tasks to be decomposed down to ideally a single responsibility or an atomic change. And the reason we do that is because there is a compounding effect later down the development pipeline that is mitigated by having atomic or smaller stories. And what I mean by that is if you have a story that's 4 points, so that's 4 orders of magnitude greater than 1 in this case, you might have a massive pull request, which takes a ton of time to review, which takes a lot of time to test, also increases the chance of a code regression, and it slows down the development cycle. So we try to introduce atomic and small changes into our code base and keep our development cycle as fast as possible because we're doing small code changes, quick PR reviews, quick merges, quick quality assurance testing, and quick deployment. And so really what we've done is like when we do the epic planning process and then we break down that epic into smaller stories, we try to get every story to roughly the weight of one story point so that we're forcing everybody to break them down to then hopefully have a faster development iteration cycle later downstream.
I love this. I mean, it's super tactical, but super useful. I think stuff that people can put to work almost immediately. So this is awesome. Um, so as we start to wrap, maybe as a final question, we talked a little bit about culture and highly effective teams, hiring for versatility, and learning on the job. Let's talk about learning as kind of like our parting question here. How do you think about helping develop and not just develop a culture of learning, but helping younger, more junior engineers get up that learning curve? Any tips that you can maybe share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. So I think the low hanging fruit is to encourage more senior developers to take a little bit more time during pull request reviews to share knowledge and to give structured feedback. It's really easy to be lazy while reviewing code and just say like change this, change that, I suggest this. But we try as much as we can to use pull requests as a learning opportunity for the more junior engineers, for the senior engineers can share their knowledge on maybe how to best alter the approach. We also use that epic planning process that I talked about for folks to bring to the discussion table approaches they'd like to take to a technical implementation. And that's sort of a natural learning opportunity for everybody because we have different ideas and usually we're able to come to a consensus and we're able to weigh the pros and cons of each approach and talk about those things. We also have on a weekly basis what we call a pair working session. So it's an hour and a half every Monday where we pair up and we work on different projects together. So usually it's like a pair programming exercise, but sometimes we'll do other projects, like if we're doing a technical plan or something like that. It's an opportunity for us to collaborate, but also to learn from each other. We do sometimes have structured training sessions if someone has an expertise or a specific set of knowledge in one area that others do not. Um, we'll do structured trainings during that pair working session. But we also we have our own coding best practices, and different engineers are owners of each. For example, we have best practices for within Python that are documented. Folks can contribute, suggestions for new best practices that we want to introduce. And I think that's also a mechanism for folks to learn because it's a way for us to think through and weigh what our standards are and what they should be and why they should be that way. So I think, especially because we're remote, we have to introduce some more explicit learning mechanisms for the team. There's also just, being able to collaborate in general with team members, which is always a natural opportunity for learning. But we try to put some mechanisms in place that are dedicated towards learning so that, alongside individual goals that each engineer may have and how we can facilitate them, there's also room to learn, through a collaborative format.
That's really awesome. That's great. Well, Nick, this has been incredible. I truly appreciate you taking the time. And as we're talking about learning and teaching, I think, we got so many lessons that we've learned today from you. So thanks for sharing some of your experience, in this episode of Telescope Tech Insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Max. It was great being here.
Thank you.